further ado, I'd like to introduce the first speaker in this session. That is Matt Gummery. And Matt is a product manager at Global Fishing Watch. Previously, he led policy development for the Marine Stewardship Council. He's worked on projects to incentivize fisheries to adopt science and management best practices and minimize ecosystem impacts. Now he will introduce us to the Global Fishing Watch map. Matt, you have 13 minutes including questions, and a 3-minute remaining countdown timer will appear on screen to help you with the timekeeping. So over to you.
Great, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen quickly, and please interrupt me if you can't see a slide in a Chrome window. So yes, my name is Matt Gummery and I'm a product manager at Global Fishing Watch. And firstly, thank you very much for having me here. It's been a really interesting discussion so far, and it's very great to know that lots of other organizations in the same field are having the same kinds of questions and opportunities and challenges. And particularly given the last panel discussion on whether or not we need to be chasing the innovative technology, I feel a slight amount of guilt that I'm the first up in this presentation with a slide that says innovative technology on the front. But nevertheless, hopefully you'll see that there is some value in the work we're doing and that might be useful for ICANN. So Global Fishing Watch, if you weren't aware, is an international NGO that uses satellite technology, machine learning and data visualization to build an accurate picture of human activity at sea through free and open data. So all our platform is open source and our data is publicly available to anyone with an internet connection. Our work supports greater transparency, scientific research, sustainable use of our ocean, and helps to fight illegal, unreported or unregulated fishing. So as this audience already knows, ecosystem-based management is an essential tool for the recovery of our ocean. But that can be hampered by inadequate access to data, or just a lack of awareness that the data exists, or the fact that those who produce the data can't always get it into the hands of those who can use it, which can therefore lead to lost opportunities. And that's one thing we're trying to address with our platform. Particularly, as kind of was evidenced in the last panel discussion, lots of data is quite difficult to access and can be behind these kind of barriers where you would need a costly GIS analyst to provide the data for you, or the data might be static, whereas you need a dynamic view. So if it's locked in a map in a PDF, for example, but you want to know what's happening right till last week, that can impact your decisions and the decisions you're able to make with the available data. So this is all an area that we're looking to address with our portal. It's called the Marine Manager Portal, and it provides dynamic interactive data to support MPA management, or kind of spatial management generally, marine spatial planning, but you'll see that is not fully formed yet. We're kind of working towards that in the future, and scientific research. So our vision is that spatial managers can effectively use their limited resources to manage large-scale marine areas, that new areas of protection are set up with best available science, and impacts of these sites can be monitored over time. And generally, that more accessible maps of dynamic human activity and environmental data are available to a wide audience to support dynamic management. And we obviously acknowledge that we're only a very small part of the puzzle and the solution, but we think that we can help in this field because we now have a historic human activity data set at sea, and it's near real-time dynamic data. So it goes back to 2012 and all the way up to 3 days ago, and we're constantly updating it. And for a non-profit, we have a in-house design and engineering team, which focus very heavily on ease of use. So the fact that anyone could go to this website and access data or find out basically what is happening on the ocean, where it happens and when it's happening. We spend a lot of time trying to focus on that, whilst facilitating more kind of complex use cases that people might have that are more up to date with the data and want to do more complex analyses. And as I mentioned, it's free to anyone with an internet connection. So we understand that some communities do not have an internet connection, so they couldn't access this kind of data. But for those that have any kind of cellular or internet-based connection, we've worked very hard to ensure that our platform is performant for those areas. So working with sites where bandwidth is perhaps low, and they still want to see what's going on the coastline and understand where fishing or other activity may or may not be happening. So without further ado, I'm going to take you into a live demo. And hopefully I'm preaching to an audience that understands that live demos are a little bit tricky on these technology platforms where you're sharing your screen as well as trying to access an internet site. But there we go, we'll see how it goes. So this is the Marine Manager portal, globalfishingwatch.org/marine-manager will get you there. And at the moment, we're working with a few sites around the world. So this eventually is going to be a globally applicable tool. But we acknowledge that because we've been focused on illegal fishing only for a certain amount of time, we still have a lot to learn as an organization. And so we want to work and embed ourselves with a few partner sites to understand exactly how they may benefit from a portal and how we can adapt over the next few years. So we're running basically a pilot program for a few years with constant discussion with these sites to get their feedback and understand how we might be able to improve before we scale up. That seems to be really, really important to us. And then when you click into a site, you're immediately presented with this map, and you can see Ascension Island here in the middle of the Atlantic, and this green heat map of apparent fishing effort activity. And what I was talking about in terms of dynamic data, we have this time bar along the bottom of the screen that currently shows a few months of a year. What you can do, unlike a static map, is immediately move between different time ranges and see exactly how that activity changes over time. So if you wanted to zoom out from a decade to years to months to days to hours, you can do that very quickly and very responsively. And I'm actually on a cellular connection at the moment, so I'm not on an internet. So you can see that that was relatively fast in terms of how it responded. And that allows people in these remote locations to understand what might be going on potentially in an area they're interested in or around the border of an area as well. So what I can now do, if I was, we're working with the Ascension Island government and they're interested in fishing that's happening around the outside of their marine protected area. They see this hotspot and then they can click on any of the grid cells to see an overview of which fishing vessels are active in that area over the time period we've selected. They can see the flag state of the vessel, the gear type, and click on that vessel name to add a track to the map. And so then they can see exactly where it was over a certain time period, which is just loading at the moment. Then we know that there are other drivers that are important for activity. So for example, there is a link in some cases between certain types of fishing and sea surface temperature. So instead of having to download this data, go somewhere else and get the sea surface temperature data and then combining yourself using some kind of package, we want to try and make that as easy as possible for people. So they can simply press one button and load on a layer of sea surface temperature to their map. They can find out more information about how that data has been brought in. But it's all simple as that, just clicking on a layer and then you suddenly have more information. And we could see this being valuable in stakeholder meetings where you bring a group of different stakeholders together and you want to build up a more complex image as you go and bring it along everyone in the room with you to understand what's going on in this area of the ocean. As you can see, this heat map of fishing activity is very closely linked to sea surface temperature in this instance. You can hover over these white dots of activity to see where there was fishing as well. And you can upload your own information. So if you want to combine your information with this dynamic activity data information, you can add, for example, tracking data. So if you're a researcher and you're working with seabird tracks, for example, you can add that. You can add polygons, for example, certain areas, or environmental features like seamounts. And as you do that, we try and, from our work with the stakeholders, we try and intelligently pull out kind of the parts of the data that might be useful to show. So for example, if there's latitude and longitude, we automatically pull that out for the user. So we're just trying to make their life as easy as possible, basically, so they can use this data and platform to make good decisions about areas that they're interested in. As I am conscious of time, I'm probably going to leave it there, but I'm very happy to have any questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's really nice to be able to see the power of the platform and the ability to kind of overlay all these different environmental and fishing information. I do have one question that's come in here on the chat, and it is the information you're providing in near real time being published through map services? That is, can we ingest those constantly, updating data services into our data portal and make them available for viewing and query to our users?
Yeah, so that is something that we're working on at the moment, and I'm sharing my screen at the moment, so I can't see who that was, but I'd love to follow up with you because we are now piloting API access to our data. So you will be able to access all of the activity data and import it straight into your system as well to use it and combine it in any way that you would like. That's really important to us. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We want to collaborate as much as we can. And so sharing data and being able to access other data to bring it into this system would be the goal there.
Thanks very much for that. And a question I have is, the information on fishing effort that you have, is that from AIS systems and fishery systems, or does it also compile other resources?
Yeah, great question. So the global map is AIS, and we have a team that we call the transparency team that work with governments around the world to provide them some analysis in exchange for sharing their VMS data. We also at the moment are working on a few additional data sets. So for example, we have VIRS, which shows night light activity. So for example, squid fishing uses a lot of lights and happens at night, so you can kind of pick that up where you wouldn't normally be able to pick it up from vessel movements. And also synthetic aperture radar data, which can see through clouds and can see like large metal objects that may not be transmitting AIS. So for us, it's about building up the puzzle picture using all of these different sources and combining them in a sensible way as we can to try and create a picture of what's going on at sea.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I think there's some other questions that are on the chat, so please feel free to put your comments and responses in there, Matt, to the